Welcome everybody to the Hats Off to the Doctor. We're going to be looking at hats of Doctor Who, mostly focused on the Doctor himself and herself, what they've worn, and talking about the various things that they've put on their head, including maybe even tapping into what some of the companions have worn and everything. So I'd like to welcome you to Council Room's panel, and like to introduce you to the panelists here. I'm Bruce Rehberg. We also have Taylor Cisco and Emily Chesley, and we're going to get this thing started because in the next hour we've got a lot of hats to cover. As I was doing research for this, I was surprised by the number of hats the Doctor has actually worn. When I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, there's the one 5 wore and the one that 7 wore, and then a couple smatterings there and a fez. Well, that is not quite the case. So let's get rolling and see where this takes us. Hartnell. Here was a surprise, and I guess I should point out that we very possibly may have missed some, because some of these appear in small snippets. There's a few episodes missing, so it's very possible that may not know of a hat. So if that's the case and you know of one that we don't know of, put it down in the comments. So what do you guys think of Hartnell, Hurndall, and Bradley wearing the various hats that he has had on?
I think that first one, the one that we kind of most know him in, looks a lot like a Garrison hat, except made out of fur. But I have one that's sort of like the shorter cowboy hat that he's wearing.
Okay.
Mine is much like what Zorro wears.
Okay.
And it's got a similar form because the crown is shorter. So that's the one that I have that's most like the first Doctor.
Cool.
And I could kind of, yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I love I think it's pronounced karakul or karakul. I can't pronounce it. It's like the Russian hat that the two-pointed with the folded brim is distinctive, iconic. I think it's just such a strong start, giving the Doctor a distinctive look. And such a distinguished profile for, I guess it's not really a very common hat outside of colder countries like Northern Poland and Russia. But that fleece, I mean, like when Bradley popped back up in Twice Upon a Time, not only did he do a great job emulating a lot of Hartnell's like speech patterns and his characterizations, but he wore the hell out of that hat.
Definitely.
It made that profile just as distinctive.
Yep.
And it's not an easy one to pull off.
No. And it's not one of those that, like you said, that you see around. And I don't know if that was more common in the 60s in Britain, maybe. Don't know. Obviously, they have a different time than we're living in now. So I'm sure grabbed various things and said, well, that would be cool and look good on screen. A small black and white.
Looking at all the photos that you've amassed here, which is awesome, just seeing them all at once, it's almost like he's kind of giving us foreshadowing for all the subsequent Doctors. Because there's kind of hints, like they're not exactly like, that's not exactly a fez that he's got going on, but it's pretty close to sort of like brimless, sort of a Kofi type cap he's got there. And of course the top hats, and then he's got an actual, is that like a 2-finger fedora from Dalek's Master Plan. We see the fedora pop up quite often. Of course, those damn cowboy hats keep So many doctors keep going back to that. But it's kind of, I wonder if that was obviously not in the original producer's intention, but if later showrunners, if they went back for inspiration for costuming or something like that, because it is kind of funny seeing these 8 photos. It's like, oh, you can kind of see hints of all the other doctors' headgear through time.
Right, right. And as we get farther in, we'll look back and go, yep, I've seen that before. And he's worn several of that throughout his and her time. Anything else we got on Hartnell and et al., I should say?
Definitely need to bring back large, like comically large feathers, adornments on men's hats. I think that's missing from the current era of Who. I think Yaz could pull it off nicely.
Oh, yeah. Well, and as I look at again, compiling all this, there was a more focused point in the early Who to be history minded. So they went and used the costumes, and they were putting on costumes to go out. Now the Doctor can just walk out and nobody makes any notice and wearing completely different clothes. But maybe that's from the episode where Smith projected his clothes and can make it look like anything, and those people are seeing that, perhaps.
A clothing chameleon circuit.
Exactly. So let's move on to Hartnell, Troughton, and he really went to town with the variety of hats. Again, the top hat that came through a couple of times. 2 Doctors, back to the power of the Daleks. Even though the power of the Daleks won, he didn't wear it much, and then it just kind of disappeared. I think that was going to be his signature, and then did not.
They found a mirror on set, and he had like a different opinion.
Yeah. I would say he's more hobo-ish without it, and more, I would even say accessible than with the top hat. And then he did a lot more disguises. So he put the hat on to disguise himself. Like in the Highlanders, he was 3 different, the cleaning woman, and I don't know all of the names of the hats, but I know he had the tricorn.
I'm looking up the one on the left because I should know the name of it, having worked in a kilt shop. It's specifically a Scottish hat. This one, Balmoral.
Okay.
I believe is what that one's called.
Okay. And then he's got the Major's hat from the Macra Terror. And then a military hat from the War Games. And then here's where we kind of branch out into more of the things that were just put on his head, like in the Crotons and the Wheel in Space. Those aren't necessarily hats, but headwear to a degree. And then the Phantom Menace, he obviously had 2 different costumes there. Again, a little bit more on the historical side, so I'm going to blend in and wear costumes.
I really enjoy when the Doctor does that.
Right. I think it helps put you into that time.
Yeah.
Regardless of which Doctor you're watching, it helps pull you in, I think, a little bit more. I would totally agree.
And I believe that the right hat can make the outfit.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's why I have such a large collection.
So, like, could you imagine the Macra Terror and he's got a Stetson on? Yeah, I don't think that's going to go over so well. You know, they may not notice, but probably the best hat is the right hat. All right, let's move on to Pertwee. All right. Pertwee went in space and had the helmets, space suits, and first one to wear a shower cap. And he also did a lot more disguises to fit in.
I was surprised at how many, because like I just going off of memory and then quickly scanning through a few episodes, it's like, oh, okay, maybe Third Doctor didn't really wear hats too often, but here clearly, like he's just got them all left and right. Got the miner's cap and
exactly.
He's got the flat cap, the newsie. He's got the high peak fedora, looking extremely dapper.
Yeah,
I mean, just so much going on.
And those first three were in the first episode, just as he's like, okay, I need to blend in so I can get out of this hospital. And I think he looks really good in the fedora. But he chose to like just grow out his hair throughout his run and do it that way rather than wearing hats continually. But again, fitting in by changing his hat and becoming a cleaning woman, just like Troughton did.
It's kind of cool too how like the headwear, like it really matches the personality of the actor and the way that they portray the Doctor, because most of the hats from Troughton's era or run, they wouldn't really work with Pertwee. Like there's no reason why he couldn't, because like you just mentioned, like he wore disguises also. But I mean, Pertwee in a top hat would be off-putting, or a military cap would be a little too like, oh, that's. But seeing him in a fedora, it's like, oh yeah, absolutely, of course, and all the various helmets, and
it's also face shape. That fedora looks really good on his face shape and the proportion and everything too.
True. And I seem to recall, and I could be wrong, that originally they were going to have him wear a top hat. But when you put his height against Joe Grant, so diminutive that it's like, okay, we can't do this. The camera angles will never be right. Because he was just so tall.
And none of it's really, I don't want to say silly, but I can't think of a better word for it. Whereas like Troughton could kind of go all out with like bandanas, and, like feathers and all kinds of craziness. Whereas Pertwee, again, to Emily's point, he has a great face for hats, but there's something about like his kind of understated gravitas, not to be pretentious, but like the way that the Third Doctor carried himself wouldn't really lend itself to like an over-the-top silly headpiece. So like a miner's helmet works. Some futuristic weirdo gizmos, all right. Like a woefully inadequate space helmet, sure.
or the helmet that you're wearing in the little helicopter in the Planet of the Spiders. I can't believe they actually had people go up in that, and that was their protection. Yes, he was the gadget person, but oh man. Considering the protections that we now wear, that was like, oh well, here, just have a cloth helmet on. It'll be good for you. All right, let's move on to Tom Baker. Another one that I was a bit surprised on the ones that I found, because my thinking was the first four when he was trying to figure out his costume, and then it's like, oh, and then he changed to the maroon fedora, and then there he was, and I'm like, oh my, I found this. And he then put on the helmet and the costume in the Ribos operation. He put on the chauffeur's hat in the Seeds of Doom. And then I bet you, Emily, you know the name of the hat for the Terror of the Zygons. Is that the same one?
That's the Balmoral. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. The other Scottish one is the Glengarry,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a flat one that's kind of folded and has a pom-pom
Okay.
with a bit of a ribbon coming down.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's the one that pipers wear, the Glengarry.
Gotcha. And then here's the first time that we have the Sherlock Holmes hat.
Which is called a deerstalker.
Deerstalker.
Okay. And this was the first time that he did the costuming really without the scarf as well.
That's because Sherlock doesn't wear
Correct.
the scarf.
Correct. So he truly went into costume at that point, as to, and the horror of Fang Rock with the bowler. And then, of course, crowned in the Invasion of Time. And the one that I stumbled on was the Stones of Blood, where he's wearing the I don't even know what you would call that, other than maybe a fake wig.
It looks like a Parliament powdered wig.
Mm-hmm.
And almost done in the way, I don't know if you've seen The Great. It's kind of a spoof TV show on Catherine the Great.
Mm-hmm.
And they initially wear the powdered wigs wrong because they don't know.
Okay.
You can see their hair underneath.
Uh-huh.
Because they're wearing them like hats, not like wigs.
Okay.
And that's what that reminds me of.
He certainly is doing that here. And then he was in the Pyramid of Mars. He put on that whole outfit, and whether he actually dressed up as it, I don't know, because I couldn't find any place where he took it off or put it on. Whereas some of the other things coming up later, we will have people actually putting it on and taking it off. So it's like, yep, they were truly underneath that. They actually had it on. And the fact that he did, two different versions with color as far as the fedora goes, from when he first started to switching in the Leisure Hive.
Different scarf.
Mm-hmm. And different
So
scarf,
scarf,
different jacket.
Yeah.
He did have 3 jackets: the lighter one, the tanner one, and then maybe 4. Because he had the one in the robot and then the one in the Leisure Hive. I guess Seeds of Doom. See, you could get into costuming too. So if you want to do a panel about costuming, here might be your tip to take off from where we've left off with costuming and what the Doctor has worn. You could do a panel on every one of them.
Just go piece by piece. You got hats, you got like overcoats and jackets, and like the various pants and leggings of the Doctor.
Exactly.
And accessories, of course. You got
pins and brooches and hats and I love it. All right, let's go and take a look at Davison. So Davison didn't quite have as many, but he would roll up and put in his pocket. So he had it with him. He just wasn't wearing it all the time. And so that's why we put the multiple episodes for the one picture. And then he came back, and the hat is slightly different when he did Time Crash.
Yes, much nicer.
A little bit cleaner.
Styled up. What do they call you? Glow up? Is that what the kids say? He had a glow up in the interim. I mean, his original Panama is a nice Panama, but it seems like the
Mhm.
kind that you would just go pick up at any haberdasher or like any store for that matter. He's
Right.
like, I want a Panama hat. And you, like, even
Mhm.
Target in the summer, they have like mass produced variations. And then Time Crash, he's totally like, no, I
Mhm.
don't think you heard me the first time. I'm the doctor. And they're like, oh, sorry. Here you are. He's like, that's more like it.
Well, and I'm sure back even in the 80s, that it's like, you know what? We don't have the budget for the really good stuff. So get the closest thing off the bargain rack that you can get, or sew one up. But yeah, he did the two helmets, you know, for spacesuit.
Wildly impractical, inadequate space helmets.
Yep, exactly. But that's Doctor Who.
Yeah, that's...
All right. And then Colin Baker. Here was another one of my surprises, because the only one that was coming to my mind was when he did the Attack of the Cybermen and wore the policeman's hat. It's the only one that came to my mind. And then as I'm thinking about it and looking, and then it's like, oh yeah, the two doctors, he kind of wore the pokerman hat. and he only wore it for a little bit. And then in Mind Warp, he was put on whatever they put on his head to do whatever. And then the Mysterious Planet, I looked to see if he actually wore that hat on screen, but I could not find it. Doesn't mean it's not there, but I think he only wore it in the publicity photo.
And I believe that's a boater.
I will trust you on that.
Like usually they're straw. So you think barbershop quartet, that's usually what they wear.
Right. Yep.
And this isn't a boater, but it's close.
Oh, that's pretty spot on.
It definitely got the shape. Definitely. Yep. Yep. So are you going to do some barbershop for us as well?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, giving you the option.
I almost feel like with Baker or with Six, they kind of knew that with the jacket and vest and pants that they couldn't do too much more, or else he'll come off like there's that fine line that the doctor walks between. I mean, we know it's fiction, we know it's a little outlandish and fantastical, but they still want to keep it somewhat grounded. Because even that pith helmet he's got, the Bobby hat, like I know there's a lot of reports of his time on BBC and how he was either he was acting rather phallic or the BBC press was okay. But to have him look that way, that was, it was like, oh, come on, guys. Like someone in wardrobe was like, are we really gonna let him go out like that?
Right. Well, and I think that, like you said, with the coat and the whole costume, there was so much, and I think that that's one reason why people are not necessarily a fan of the Sixth Doctor, simply because of the coat. And I would tend to agree that the things that I have watched since and watched again, it's like, you know, if you pay attention to the story is good. But that costume keeps pulling my attention. And when somebody did the version where they turned everything to blue, I was like, you know what? That is a much more subtle patchwork, and I like it. But they didn't ask me.
It's even like the coat has a lot going on, and if his like ensemble, like his shirt and pants and waistcoat was a little bit less that,
right,
then he could have pulled off the coat, maybe.
Right.
I mean, the Fourth Doctor got away with running around with like 19,000 feet of scarf.
Correct.
But because the rest of him was pretty tame, you're like, all right, sure, you can have a scarf that can encircle the globe. That's fine. Or even with I don't want to jump ahead, but like some of the other costumes with like question mark vest and like Victorian era garb, it's like, well, that's a little bit much, but that's going to be like the centerpiece. Whereas Baker, there's like, just everything we got.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, is he wearing spats in the Two Doctors? I don't think I've ever noticed that before.
He wore spats.
I think they literally just gave him the entire wardrobe department.
They go with the visor.
And green shoes. It's like, what?
Yeah, but green and red are complementary colors, so that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, but all the other colors in there.
Stripes and plaid and polka dots.
Rainbow.
Yeah. 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 Yep. Technicolor kind of threw up on him. And then as a contrast to him, we have McCoy, which toned it way back down
Yes.
again. Toned it way back down.
McCoy. So he was my first doctor, and so he'll always be my favorite doctor.
Sure.
Yeah. That whole top line from his little adventure in the wardrobe of the TARDIS.
Yeah, and bringing out some historical things, and then wearing his own history, like, oh, he's going to go with something he's already worn. Well, no, and then finally throws it off and comes up with his own.
I wish I had a bicorn. It's like what Napoleon wears, that first one.
Oh, okay, that's a bicorn. Okay, I knew tricorn.
Two sides.
If you wear your tricorn
Bicorn
backwards.
has 3 sides.
Okay, sure.
Just take your tricorn and there you go.
Pretend it's taller.
And then he's got the military, went with that, and then foreshadowing. He did a bit of that with wearing the one where you get graduated in. I don't know what that's.
The motorboard.
Yeah.
There you go.
Mortar board. Yeah.
I told you I didn't know the names of these things. And he was the first one to wear the fez. Briefly, and
Sadly
trying to catch that.
Sadly, not the last.
Nope. He definitely did not. And then in the Silver Nemesis, he had his hat off and had Ace wear it for a bit as they were just listening to music. And so he just had a bandana on. And then even when he came back for the Doctor Who movie, they updid the hat again.
Yeah, that Optimo.
Because it's a little bit more rounded on top than his Panama hats.
I almost feel like that was maybe a knockoff. Like they were like, look, you're just coming back. You're really just here to, spoilers for a 30-year-old film. You're just here to die so you can regenerate into McGann. So like we found this at a costume shop, or some fan sent us in their cosplay fees. Because there's lots of very, very noticeable distinctions, like the way the brim is rolled. It's not it's not blocked the same. They have the crown is just completely round and circular, whereas Optimos have that very distinctive sort of like ironed in crease, although it's not like ironed, and it's I do like the idea of taking tricorns and making them bicorns. So I think you're onto something, Emily. You started a new trend that's going to be the new hotness.
Well, I mean, you can do it. You just need the round hat. I made this one.
I made this one.
Just pin it up. Yeah.
We just became besties. Although I just used those little things for like 3-hole punches.
Nice.
That's how those are my hat pins.
Whatever works when you're making things. Obviously, that's how they do it in Doctor Who. Whatever works, make it work.
And silly string. Monster.
Or in the case of Colin Baker, just everything we got, just give it to him.
There you go. If you've got scraps, put it on there. Absolutely. All right. And then another one of my surprises as I was putting this together was McGann. I didn't realize that he had actually put on the Stetson for the briefest of moments and then threw it on the wayside, because obviously one of the doctors.
The Stetson's not for him.
Well, Hartnell pulled it off.
But he wasn't Edwardian.
True. And then the whatever cadet is that he's wearing,
sort of his 9 Inch Nails music video outtake look
Being-
there.
Mhm.
being brainwashed device.
Yeah. Yeah. And then as we move on to Hurt, he didn't wear anything. He touched the fez, but he never put it on, which would have been nice had he put it on even for the briefest moment and then continued on from there.
War Doctor is way too fashionable to mess with the fez. He's like, he has post-apocalyptic thing going on. He's like, eh.
The fez is way too festive for the War Doctor.
True. Good point. And then Eccleston also did not wear any hats. Again, a surprise because I thought, I swear I saw him with one on. Nope. I looked through everything. Couldn't find it. Again, if you find something that we missed, put it in the chat.
I think with 9 too, that was like kind of the opposite of Baker, where because 9's ensemble was so muted that anything else would have drawn all the attention to that. Like if he had,
True.
even if it was just like a baseball cap, a newsie, or something kind of
True.
innocuous, even a fedora, like, oh, he would be the fedora doctor, or he'd be like the newsboy cap doctor, because everything else was like weekend dad who just lost his job with like, the muted colors and just kind of, it wasn't a bad look. It was just very, 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 I'm going to blend in the bed, like nondescript.
Also, again, I think it really fit his personality, like post-traumatic from this war.
True.
The somber. He was the doctor in mourning.
And if he had gone on longer rather than just the one series, it's very possible that he would have run into putting a hat on for even the briefest moments, putting it on, trying it on, and then throwing it on the sidelines, just like 8 did. Now, Tennant again came back with a vengeance and decided to wear some hats again.
He makes up for 9.
Yes,
he does. He definitely does. And if you kind of think about it, 9 and 10 are somewhat the same doctor, because he kind of regenerated in the middle of when he probably should have hung on for a little longer. And if he had hung on longer, these would have been his episodes. So depends on how you look at it, I guess.
At least he has more appropriate like space protection.
Correct.
Like I feel like, oh, okay, now you can, not worry about dying of asphyxiation or extreme radiation now, because you can, because that's what people are looking for in Doctor Who is, scientific accuracy.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And what was it? I think it was the Abyss, which was the first movie that used underwater, where you could actually see their face, because they wanted the actor's reaction to things. And from there, they're like, well, if they can do that, we're going to do that in the space side of things, not just underwater, because we want to see them, not, oh, well, here's these tiny little eye slits and, well, anybody could be under there. So they definitely came along those lines as far as the spacesuits go for Tennant. Absolutely.
Okay. And his end of time, when he was on the planet of the Ood, and he's wearing the straw Gus or gambler style cowboy hat, I hate that so much. That's my least, like, more so than the fez. It's my least. It's something about, I don't know, because it's sort of the we mentioned with 9. It's his normal ensemble is okay. It's distinctive enough with the really long overcoat and then like the casual suit with the sneakers. And then you throw in a lei, and it's like he looks like every jerk at every like hotel on vacation. And I know that was like the point.
That was the point,
right.
yeah.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
Like
So
what hat
grating.
can we put on him that will just add that extra level? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they wanted to turn it into he's been on vacation, and he certainly apparently has. And yet not relating anything back to Queen Bess, which you would think because he mentioned her, he might have something with him from that era, possibly, but he did not. We didn't
So
find that
I
out until
feel-
the day of the doctor.
I feel like the vacation he was on was an emotional avoidance.
Mhm.
And so going as far as he did with that outfit really shows how he's in denial.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes, that is definitely like that's not the all-inclusive like tropical vacation look. That's the sort of like I'm on a business trip to like Tucson, Arizona, and there's a 2-for-1 special at the Denny's across the parking lot. So let's whoop it up.
If I had sandals to put on over these knee socks,
Yes.
we would just push it a little farther.
And I blended in. I really
Yeah.
blended in. And here he did wear the appropriate safety helmet for when he was running around in the 50s. That's what they would have worn. And then in Human Nature, wearing the fez, or I mean the
Fedora.
fedora, and what's the other one called?
Mortarboard.
Mortarboard. Okay. Again, foreshadowed by previous doctors. And he pulls it off, when he's not as the doctor.
And kind of a fun thing noticing, again, looking at them all at once in this
Mhm.
compilation, it's sort of like Tennant, well, 10th Doctor. He knew that the hats were like special because they weren't an all the time thing. And every image and also every episode, it's almost like the hats are wearing him. Like they always seem just a little, like he doesn't look bad in any
Right.
of the photos, even with the Club Med,
Mhm.
happy
Mhm.
hour at the Applebee's hat. But they all just seem there's something a little off, and like he's definitely like, I mean, that goes to David Tennant's credit as an actor, like just playing to that hat. Like, yes,
Right.
80th Lantern, like the motorcycle helmet, he looks like a guy who was just discovered what a motorcycle is.
Right.
He was just
Right.
like, oh, I just lucked out and put it on facing the right way.
Yep.
Even this, but like the helmets, like with Impossible Planet and 42, Waters of Mars, like that, even those, like he's almost like adding an extra layer of that mystery to it, like he's being dwarfed by them, even though they obviously fit properly. It's just like the way he holds his face and the expressions. And when you go back and watch those episodes, he really does use everything, including his own costuming, kind of bring the character. That damn Club Med hat is.
You're gonna go get one, aren't you?
Oh God. I mean, it's a great cosplay. It's a cosplay staple. I love seeing it at all the events. Whenever someone does 10, they just throw that out. Like, look, no, I'm not just 10. I'm this specific 10.
In his timeline. And then the fez just absolutely does not, in my opinion, work on his head. It's just like, no, take that off.
It's the wrong proportion to the shape and size of his face.
Right.
But it is just a reference to all the fezzes that came before.
Correct. Yep. And well, technically,
and even the doctor that came after him.
Technically after him. So speaking of technically after him, Smith, he went all out.
He wins for
Yes.
the number of hats.
This man is a hat person. And I don't know if that's him or if it's the stories. And then they said, well, we could throw a hat on him or what. Other than the fez, where he kept putting it on and just, well, I like the fez and I can't walk past it. And even River shooting it off of him and throwing it up and
usually
destroying
wears
it.
it on the back of his head so that his bangs are out the front.
Yep. And that's it in the 3 different times or the 4 different times that he's worn it. With the Big Bang.
Except for Dave the Doctor down there.
Yep. Well, then he was shaved underneath, so he was wearing a wig then. So that's probably why it didn't sit and probably would pull things off. But, you know, as we were talking about costuming, the town called Mercy would have been a great opportunity for them to actually change the costume that he was wearing. But all they did was throw the hat on him.
But it still worked kind of
It
well.
does.
Like,
It does.
Going for the like Impossible Astronaut, he's got sort of like the John Wayne, the Cattleman style Stetson.
Mm-hmm.
But then,
Mhm.
yeah, with Town Called Mercy, and he's got like the pinch front, the roll up,
Mhm.
the gambler.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even with the bow tie, which it took a long time for that to grow on me.
Mhm.
11, definitely not in my top. He's in my top 13. of
Okay.
doctors, top 14, definitely.
Okay.
But that
Phew, glad we squeezed him in there.
it sort of works. It's almost period accurate, almost,
Mm-hmm.
because bow ties were a thing in the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, but he could have put a bolo on, and that would have been a little bit more authentic for the space and time.
but should anyone ever really wear a bolo on purpose?
Well, they did.
If
Again,
you're going for the spaghetti
historical.
recipe.
Historical. But he had the tricorn, and like Pertwee, he also had the hood, which we will then see in a bit with Jody, having the hood on in A Good Man Goes to War. And then he also had a couple of space suits, one of which he did not wear quite correctly. It was a little backwards.
It's a smidge.
But it did what it needed to do when he fell to Earth, which was a foreshadowing for Jody as well. But then when he's riding the motorcycle for the Bells of St. John, I don't think that looks like a safe hat.
No, well, especially considering he wrote it vertically up the side of that building.
Yep.
Probably want just a little bit more.
I would think so. I would think so. But he, did the paper hat, just like Tennant did, and Capaldi.
Well, that's a very British.
Yes,
Christmas
the
thing,
Christmas
too.
thing. Yep. And
which I know because of Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm. and trying to figure out what episode these things are in, that took a little bit as well. Like, okay, I remember seeing that. Now, which episode was that? Okay, find it. So a lot of work went into finding all of these things.
Well, I want to mention too the Let's Kill Hitler hat, the top hat he's wearing there. It does look a little wasted, which is like what the Mad Hatter wears. It's not as wasted as the Mad Hatter's hat, but so I have one of those as well.
And when you say wasted, what do you mean by that?
The crown is bigger than down here.
Okay.
So there's the shape. It's a little hard to see.
Yep, I can see it.
The shape does like this. There's a waist.
Okay.
So this is my Mad Milliner hat, but I wore it in my mashup of the Fifth Doctor with the Mad Milliner, so I added the celery.
Nice. But
and that one I made.
I would say that of the people wearing the top hats, Smith really pulled them off.
Yeah.
Because he wore 3 of them, in the Snowman and Let's Kill Hitler and the Big Bang.
And they're all different.
They're all different, and they come across well. In the Snowman, it kind of harkened back to Troughton. And it's like, okay, I like it. And then he also did the Sherlock Holmes, which is called a what?
Deerstalker.
See, you guys are much better at the names of these things than me.
The flaps come down.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got protection over your neck and your eyes from rain.
Mm-hmm.
So it keeps you warm.
Better help you stalk your deer.
Yep.
Exactly.
Deer notoriously very neck oriented creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to keep it all protected.
All right. So then we'll move on to Capaldi, which in Deep Breath, he actually had the mask on that he pulled off. The one that, obviously he didn't appreciate as the Doctor was the antlers that the TARDIS put on him. But I think he was able to do that one proud.
And I feel like that's a reference to what was his name? The companion,
Wilfred.
Donna's father.
Wilfred Mott.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because he wore antlers during an episode.
You are right. I didn't even think of that correlation. I like it.
Yeah.
I like
mean,
it.
Capaldi wore it, but like it was one of those like side by side on the red carpet, like who wore it best. I think Capaldi like wins that round.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And like as we were talking earlier before starting this panel, Thin Ice, he definitely did the top hat proud. It definitely is like, yeah, you could probably wear that more. Yep.
I mean, he could have pulled that off for his entire, that could have been his look for the entire run. Kind of like a throwback to McGann with the more Victorian, Edwardian slant.
Exactly.
Because he, very dapper.
He's got the classic carriage to be able to pull that off.
Right. And then he did the spacesuits again, being able to see their face a little better. I like the one in oxygen. Not such a fan of the other two, but you got to mix it up.
Oh yeah.
All right. And then Jodie. Yay. Now, she, again, did the promo with the hood. So it's like, okay, well, that's kind of a head covering, so we'll include it in here. And even though it wasn't, I was hoping that they would take that promo and include it as part of when she actually gets to the TARDIS. That it's like, oh, and what have you got for me this time? And here's the key. And that would have been cool to wrap that tiny little snippet into the actual episode. But they did it differently. They again did not ask me.
Those bastards.
I really love that steampunk welding helmet.
Yes. With like this slight, almost like Gallifreyan symbolism, even though it's not quite Gallifreyan. It's yeah. No, Jodie's another one kind of like Matt Smith. Like they've done a really good job of making sure that everything they put on her just looks that she can pull it off really well.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if this counts, but it was on her head. But like the similar scene when she was making her sonic screwdriver and she had the oversized goggles.
Yes.
Like
yes.
But it still worked. Yes. Like on the average person, they would look a little nutty having these ginormous, like those goggles could block out the sun in the desert. But she was, I got it. So and the fez works ish.
For the snippet, it worked. Yes.
She has the face shape. Actually, her face shape is similar to mine, and I can pull off a bunch of different hats. So I think that if she gets more hats, she's just going to look good in everything. That's my prediction.
Yeah. Well, and when they did Spyfall, I'm surprised they didn't put a hat on her, because with the costume change, it's like, well, that would have been really cool to also have a hat, even if it was just temporary. But if you notice the hat on the Witchfinders, this is something that dawned on me as I was pulling all of these pictures together, which obviously we've gotten through all of the doctors that are our doctor, but there are other doctors as well. So the Morbius doctors were meant to be the doctor, and all 8 of them, only one did not have a hat in the photo that they used. And looking online, they did have a whole bunch of photos of the people that were portraying the Morbius doctors, and they were trying to do a more Edwardian look to all of them, and all of them had a hat. And so I was like, okay, well, look at the third one in the top row, and that's the same hat that Jody wore in the Witchfinder.
The Witchfinder, because the Puritans had those really tall hats.
Mm-hmm.
You think of a pilgrim, that's that hat from that era. I will say in that top row with the black and white, the last one, with the one side up, that's a Cavalier hat. So what the Three Musketeers would have worn.
Okay.
So that's like 1660s and end of the 1600s when those would have been worn.
And then the Ruth doctor didn't wear a hat yet that we know of.
She's got time.
Yeah. I hope that she'll come back and wear a hat.
All the time.
And then the Trial of the Time Lord with the Valeyard being an amalgamation of the Doctor between his current and final regeneration, wore the hat. So we have gotten through all of them. So let's just, and that is how they all pan out to be 116 hats.
Amazing.
When I thought that there were like, oh, maybe 5, 6, maybe, you know. And obviously Smith, he's the one. But I think he was trying to just get past the Pertwee and Tom Baker. I'm just going to do more.
It's all on Whitaker now. She has to every episode for the next 2 seasons. She's got off them on. Just scene by scene.
If they
there's a closet of them in the TARDIS, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if they do more historicals, which they seem to be leaning a little bit more heavily onto, they could go back into the costuming and do it that way as well.
Especially now they're slimming down the TARDIS crew with the departure of Graham and Ryan. So probably a little bit easier. It's just like, all right, yes, let's go dress up like blah, 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 because it's 14, whatever.
Right. And let's fit in. And they did that in with Tesla. They wore costumes that truly fit. So we've gotten through the Doctor. So I'm going to stop sharing and bring it back to us. There we are. And the question would be, since Taylor, you probably know a little bit more or had thought a little bit more about the companions also wearing hats.
Yes.
We'd be here for another 2-3 hours covering all of those.
So many to go through, but just a few that really stood out. Be like Madame Bastra of the Paternoster gang and her Victorian bonnets, especially the ones with the big veil, because she didn't want people to see that she was Silurian. But she still was like, I'm still going to have a very keen fashion sense with these massive, gorgeous hats, which were kind of like a nice contrast to Missy, who was also dressed similar era, also Victorian wear, but did more of the flat cap Victorian style, and even Spectators in a couple of episodes. And even when she wasn't wearing a hat, she still had really nice, I don't have enough hair to know what they're called, bows, clips, barrettes, the thingies that people with hair or longer hair use to hold their hair in the back. But, yeah.
Fun.
And then of course, or not of course, but then there's sort of the one-offs that really stand out to me were Liz Shaw, when she drove Bessie, had this ginormous sun hat as if she was heading off to the Kentucky Derby. Sarah Jane Smith in a couple episodes had a little sun hat, a little bucket hat.
Yep.
Collar flip down, sort of a la Blossom. Of course, Unit and all their military headgear with the berets and Lethbridge Stewart's. I think it's like a field marshal's cap or air marshal, whatever that's called, that style where it's sort of, oh, here it comes.
Our hat source, Emily. You talk about it, she'll pull it out from behind.
We would get tricky because the other Time Lord, the Inquisitor, when the Sixth Doctor was on trial, basically had the Inquisition hat or the Inquisitor's hat, which was the Time Lord's collar but only
Right.
slightly smaller and bejeweled, and a
Right.
hat. And it was
Right.
like, there's a lot going on that poor Gallifreyan's head,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
pulled it off. It still came off regal. A bit more
True.
hat probably than is practical, even for someone who's going to live forever with two hearts. But it was a lot of
Well,
fun.
and then Maxwell, or was it Maxim? Colin Baker, when he was the Sentry, wore a helmet,
Yep.
which, you know, was again Gallifreyan. So
Yes. And didn't Romana, either Romana 1 or Romana 2, didn't she wear a boater also in like 1 or 2 episodes?
I think so.
She had like the cricket or the jacket that seemed very like reminiscent of the Fifth Doctor
Mm-hmm.
a few times. And I thought there's 1 or 2 episodes where she was sporting a bowler as she was torturing the Fourth Doctor.
I know that she wore the Panama hat when she first changed, and tried on different personas,
Yes, that was
which is
fantastic.
still odd. That you can just, well, I'll try something else. I'll try something else. And
Amy
then,
Pond wore a tricorn.
yep.
That was one of my favorites.
Amy
On
wore
her
that.
body, her kissogram hat.
Oh, yes.
First meet Amy, she's got the little kissogram hat, which then it turns out it's pretty close to what the actual police wear. Because when we first meet Yaz, she's
Mm-hmm.
also wearing sort of a kissogram hat, but she's an actual officer.
Right. Exactly. Trying to think through all of the episodes we've ever watched. You know, I think I recall Zoe playing, or in that one photo that she had the hat on, similar to Troughton. And then Sarah Jane Smith wore the hood, just like Pertwee did as they were sneaking into the Time Warrior.
And there were uniforms too. So like I remember Tegan, because she was like a flight attendant or something.
Yes, she
kinda
had
like
the little
hat.
hat.
Kind of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pillbot. Yep.
There are a few uniformed companions.
And I'm sure that we are missing a ton of those. Absolutely a ton of those. But we are certainly coming to the end of this, and I have to say thank you guys for doing this, because I've been thinking about this for like 3 years, and I think it worked very well having to do this remotely rather than in person, because otherwise I'd have to print all these things off.
I didn't have to drag my entire collection of hats anywhere.
Yes, valid point. Having to schlup them in.
This is just the aperitif for the in-person, which will happen at
True.
some point in the future, and then we can see all the hats in all of their glory.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And I'd just like to mention, for any cosplayers who want to look into making hats, there's a book, I don't know if you can see it, called From the Neck Up. There's complete instructions on actual millinery techniques in this with pictures. So I would suggest that as a really good resource for anyone who wants to learn how to make hats.
Cool. And I'm sure you would have pointers if they were to send you an email or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
I also have a couple friends who are milliners, hat makers.
Nice.
So I can send them on to better knowing folks as well if I don't have the answer.
And you guys knew the names of most of them. Whereas I know the Stetson, the top hat, the bowler, the big ones, not all of them. So I guess for us that is pretty much a wrap. We've come to the end of our time. Thank you all. Hope that you're enjoying the virtual console room. Unfortunately, we can't be together this year because of the COVID, but we will certainly be back as soon as we can. So thank you for hanging out with us for the last hour, and hopefully you got some information. And again, if you have any thoughts on hats that we missed, put it in the comments. Again, this is on YouTube, so put it in the comments there. And hope you have a great remainder of the day.